Hello everybody, welcome to Zach Man Productions and welcome to Conahey Rail. Got a special video for you. So in this video, I am celebrating 10 years of Conahey Rail. That's right, 10 years already. It just seems like yesterday I started this layout. So this layout started off in 2015 and here we are 2025. And there has been a few mistakes, lots of learning curves, and a few rebuilds along the way of Conahey Rail. Let's kick off the story for 10 years of Conahey Rail. Here we go. My adventures with O-Gauge started on Christmas morning 1976 with this line-out Rock Island set. It was the most wonderful gift I thought I would ever get. Came with this wonderful 1976 line-out catalog, and here I am playing with it. My grandmother actually took this picture of me, and I still run this set today underneath my Christmas tree. Fast forward to 1987, out of high school, working my first job, and I seen this Conrail 1987 limited set. It was $400 and 1987 dollars. That was a lot. I couldn't afford it, so life went on. Fast forward once again in the year 2015 with the memories of having my first real locomotive ride in a Conrail when I was younger, and that memory of wanting that 1987 Conrail Limited set. I went ahead and found one new in a box. So I set up the Conrail Limited set in my spare bedroom on the floor and ran it on carpet, as you can see here. But that plan didn't last long. I had no intentions of building a real O-Gauge layout at the time, but suddenly I had this dream to go ahead and start something. I wanted to keep the build budget minded. I really didn't have or want to spend a lot of money on materials. So I work for a trucking company as a diesel mechanic, and we haul apples, believe it or not, for Wawa. And so we had these apple crates, and they told me I could use however many I wanted because they would dispose of them anyway. And I reinforced these for platforms. So in the summer of 2015, I built this L-shaped layout using three of those apple crates that I reinforced. The apple crates were 4 by 8, so it made it really easy to go ahead and use them in the design. Decided to try my hands at hand bending Gargrave's track, and I created 048 ish curves. So I really had no plans, and this was one of the mistakes I made. I should have planned of what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to run. But at this point, I had it in my mind. This is all I really wanted. I just wanted a spot to run my Conrail limited set, but it actually became more than that. I got hit with the O-Gauge bug, so to say, and Conrail. So I spent a couple weekends building this L-shaped layout, getting the right amount of track, stopping off at my local hobby shop, and here's the end result of the 1987 Conrail Limited train set running. And I thought this would be it. I thought, okay, I'm happy, and I get to run my set that I always wanted back in 1987. And here you can already see that I added quite a bit more to it. And the more Conrail stuff I seen, the more that I wanted. And it quickly outgrew the L-shaped layout. The biggest mistake that I made was going with 048 hand bent curves because I thought this set would be it and I wouldn't be buying anything else, but that became not the point because there would be legacy and TMCC line-out trains I would have fallen in love with that was Conrail, and 048 would not be the right curves to run them on. I should have started off with actually 072, but I quickly went to 054 after this within the next year in 2016. But here I'm just enjoying running this limited set, and as you can see, all I have is this 1987 Conrail, which is a Lionel SD40 dual pull-more motors. The 3 axles are all driven, and a basic horn, and I was having fun with this. And I added the MTH signals at this time, which are still on the layout to this day, by the way. They're still working. So I decided to, start adding, since I was finding lots more Conrail and O-gauge. And I decided to, and here you can see how I'm reinforcing these apple crates here. It's a good picture. I added a lot more to it than that, but that's just the start of it. And here you can see I actually designed a U-shaped type of layout, and building it around my G-scale layout, which was still in the basement. But, I had to realize, I have to pick and choose because both scales are expensive. So I decided to sell off all my G-scale and totally get out of that G-gauge hobby, and I dived right back into O-gauge again like I did, when I left it in 1988. So now sales and proceeds from the G-scale sale, it helped me to buy the buildings and the Conrail O-gauge cars that I kept finding and wanting. And, you can see I built this shelf here. And again, I had no plans, which I would highly suggest, plan things out from the beginning. So now we're into 2016, and again, I wish I had sat down and planned things out of what I wanted to run, because it would have cost me a lot less money, a lot less headaches, the many rebuilds that I had to do. Again, I was thinking, okay, this was all that I would want, but it wasn't in the end. In actuality, at this time, I wish somebody would have said, hey, Dak, man, you should consider building this layout for 072 and 080, because those are the trains you're going to want to run with legacy. And I wish I had somebody like that back then. But you can see these sharp 048 curves that I was using, which would be no good for, the larger 6-wheel locomotives such as the SD40s. You couldn't run those on that type of curve. And really, the GP30s that you've seen me running, I probably should have had them on at least 054. I would not recommend anybody doing this, for a high rail layout. Which I wasn't even planning on a high rail layout, although I was using Gargray's track. So now I'm buying more buildings, I'm putting in roads, I'm making scenery to keep myself interested, so I'm not getting bored with just running on a bare platform. And you can see I put more shelves on this side of the U. I actually added a, to the layout to go to the wall. And again, there was just no planning into this at all. And this is what I call horseshoe curves. So I actually started updating to 054 curves later in 2016. You can see I'm getting rid of the hand-bent 048. Basically tossed that out and decided, okay. And then I went from 054 curves while using 072 switches. And, as you can see, there's a SD70 Mac at the TMCC line-out locomotive, which is one of the reasons I had to update to 054. So, buying my purchases is what forced me to make changes. And there was the start of my coal train. I started collecting that back in 2016, as you see. That's all MTH at that time. And you see, I didn't even paint this. So here's a run that I made in 2016 after switching out to 054 curves. thinking, yeah, that's all I'm ever going to need because I should be able to run any Conrail diesel on 054. Well, stay tuned for that story because 054 doesn't stay on here for many more years either. But at this point in time, you'll see that I'm running two Lionel Conrail GP30s, one powered, one non-powered. I really wasn't happy with the non-powered unit. Back then, they didn't have super bass, so there was no lights, no sound, and I ended up selling that. At that point in time, I already figured on, if I'm going to buy locomotives, they're going to be powered for the little bit of extra money that it's going to cost me, without realizing how expensive that would get later on, too. But I'm just enjoying running my trains at the end of 2016 after all this work of updating the layout so it could handle the 054 curves. You can see I widened out the ends of the layout because I'm using 4x8 crates, so now I had to actually widen the ends of the layout. Those signals would actually are still, again, on the layout. They're actually still working. They actually got moved to the other side. I still haven't finished up my addition in the other room yet at this point in time with this video. So this video must have been taken before I actually open up the room for the addition. But yeah, at one time this was actually it, as big as it gets, but as you guys know, I showed it over and over again, I actually expanded to the next room. "2017 came along and I decided to get more into the scenery. So here you can see I'm starting to ballast and put in some trees and shrubbery, and it's making a change for me. And it's like, wow, this is really getting a lot more realistic, and I'm getting more into it. So my suggestion for you guys, so you don't get stale or come to a stop, is invest a little bit into the scenery because that'll help you motivate keeping going with your layout. Because if you're always concentrating on just expanding, then it could get boring without some scenery to go along with it, and that's what I learned for myself anyway. And you can see I'm adding some sidings here so I can do some switching. That's 054 there. So that GP 30's come around on 054. And you can see that road where it's at is still in the same spot as it is today. Basically, you can see where I widened the end of the layout, as I mentioned, to fit the 054 curves. There's Horseshoe Curve, which is now 054. Those are my Atlas O Conrail cylinder hoppers there. Where those flags are is an access panel, so I can actually get underneath of these crates and actually cut holes in all of them for tunnels, so I could crawl from one to the other, to the other, to the other underneath. A little bit of a pain, but it's relatively easy. As you see in that last photo, I started to actually start building in the other room. Here I'm playing around with the Maritime buildings, trying to build kits, and I actually like it because everything out here on this layout are all MTH buildings or Lionel buildings. And here's my start of Conrail Enola Yard that I like to show every April 1st. So this is the start of it in 2017. That's the very first, what I call Conrail Enola Yard photo on Conahey Rail. And so I've been doing one ever since. And there's on my rail box. I love the rail box road name. Goes well with the Conrail era for sure. I'm pretty happy with what I have done here, even though, it's single main line, 054. I'm pretty content, especially with the scenery. And, at this time for me, it looked like something. and I couldn't have been happier. Uh, but there would be purchases that would later dictate necessary changes to Conahey Rail, that's for sure. So I was still using a cab one at this time, the old style cab one. I was so happy I figured out how to, you know, MU or lash up multiple locomotives together to run them at the same time. So I was like showing it off. Hey, I can do this with my cab one. But yeah, as you can see, I'm starting to expand this out even more because there will be certain purchases and that I was going to make later on. Um, but I wasn't sure. So at first, when I did the expansion, there was going to be a siding there, and I was still staying with 054 until I bought these auto racks. And I wasn't really happy how the Lionel auto racks ran on 054, even though they were advertised. Yeah, they can do it. They just did with the climatic couplers. I wouldn't recommend it. Um, and I found this out the hard way. For me, it just didn't work. I just had way too many derailments. So as you can see, I put them away because I was, kind of discouraged. You can see them in the background there. So I was playing around with MTH auto racks for a while, and I didn't like how they were shorter and they weren't really to scale. So I ended up selling off all the MTH auto racks and, decide, okay, maybe I can make it work on 054 somehow, some way. But it just wasn't happening. And here, now on top of that, I'm going out and buying these 86-foot high cube box cars. Again, that's 054 they're on right there. And, that's back when I was turning the train around in that same room. Again, they just did not like running on 054. The couplers would bounce a little bit, and then they would overextend, and then they would get fetched up in the one direction, and they wouldn't return, pulling the car off the curve. And it just kept happening over and over again. And it just wasn't a good experience running those on 054. And I'm hoping that people can learn from my mistakes, learning the hard way. And, unfortunately, I bought so much of the 86-foot high cube box cars and so many of the Lionel scale 89-foot auto racks that I was already too deep into, the purchase of them, and there was no way I could get my money back if I sold them. Here I am running my Lionel TMCC SD70 Mac with the Cab 1 remote. You can see the antenna. And I'm also experimenting with a cold drag with it. So then I tried to do an 072 upgrade while still incorporating the existing 054. As you can see here, I created this, not only a Y, but an S turn at the same time. That is not something you want to do. That was a big, huge mistake. That did not last long at all. I pulled all that up and started over again. By the way, this update is 2019. So we're actually in the 2019 here. I decided to go dual main line and make it two separate lines, an 072 and an 054 at this point in time. And again, a lot of major rebuilding. Took me a week to do this. In the meantime, in the other room, there wasn't enough room to put 072, so I actually had to cut into the next room, which was my workshop, and put 072 in there instead. Crazy enough, all this hard work was because I wanted to run a long train of Lionel 86-foot high cube box cars and the Lionel full scale 89-foot auto racks. And I knew if I bailed out then, I wouldn't get my money back out of it. They just weren't selling back then. But I am glad I made these changes now. Here you can see the 072/054 running through my workshop. Unfortunately, once again, updates had to be made because I like running long trains. So when I got up to 40 and 50 car trains, I was still having issues. Finally, updating to 080/072 and ditching 054 altogether. Here I'm starting to ballast the track and the next room at Farmingdale Junction. You can see the tracks running into my workshop here. Here I'm still 072/054. Again, I change all that later. I found that running 50 plus car trains on 072 just wasn't really, in my opinion, the right thing to do because I would have derailment sometimes. The trains would pull off in the curves. Even distributing the cars throughout evenly, put the heavy ones up front, light ones in the back. I felt as though it didn't work out for me. So here, finally, in 2021, I do my final update and plans. I have already painted the layout blue, and I'm planning out doing 080 on the outside, as you see here in the video. That you see me laying out the curves, and then updating the inside to 072. And so finally the layout will be 080 outside, 072 inside, and that would allow me to run these long trains, including long auto rack trains, long 86-foot high cube boxcar trains. I have a 50 plus car DPU cold drag that I like to run, which you guys have seen that. And so this all happened in 2021 during the summer, this update. And it took another week. I think actually it took me 2 weeks to do the whole entire update for this layout. Pretty sure it was 2 weeks. I actually took a week's worth of vacation, believe it or not, and then another week worth of weekends doing the inside track. So I wanted to get the outside track done in a week. And so I worked 10 hours a day during my vacation to get this all done. Crazy enough. And finally, the like I said, the plans have come together to where I can run the long trains. I can run whatever I want on this layout, pretty much with 080, including steam locomotives, actually. So I was pretty happy with the results. But again, the planning, I just wish I had planned for all this right from the get go in 2015. I wish I had sat down and figured out, okay, what do I want to run? How do I want to create the layout? And again, at the time of 2015 when I started, it was just to run a simple Conrail 1987 limited set. And then it blows up into this. So I really wasn't planning on, going from that to a full blown high rail layout, which is, about 20 foot wide and 40 foot long. I wasn't, planning on that. But here I am anyway. So this pretty much is the last update, the major update I'll make anyway. I'm not rebuilding. I'm not tearing down like other YouTube channels do. I'm too old for that. This is it for me. So, and for me, I don't find any reason why I should need to have to tear it down and start over. I pretty much designed it around the basement area that I had to work with. Pretty much the way I designed it is, you can't do much different for the way the basement's laid out. So I'm pretty happy. So by the end of 2022, I made a lot of improvements. such as putting up that backdrop to block the view of that wood stove, because a lot of times in my videos the wood stove would show up, and I had a couple comments say maybe you should put a backdrop so nobody sees that. There's my lift bridge that I created. I also moved my controls to a central control station right there up against the wall. I would recommend that to anybody. When you're starting to build, make one central location for all your controls, which I finally did, and it worked out pretty well. Because I had to move a lot of these controls into one location. It was just all over the place. So by this time, I got all my ballasting done. I got the 080 and 072 installed. Scenery, trees, bushes, grass. I got a lot of work done in this 2022 year. Now the lift bridge is designed to come out and swing out of the way. You can see I put in meters so I don't over amp my trains or accessories. The trains are all ran by Lionel powerhouse transformers, and the accessories are all ran off of a single ZW, and I also have a 12-volt DC supply for other accessories. Here I show off the train as it comes around the original main layout, which features, like I said, all MTH Lionel structures. Goes through these tunnels, and you see this wall here that divides the rooms. It goes into the next room, and then goes through the grain yard facility, through a bridge. It goes into my workshop and then swings back around, because again I couldn't fit 080 into that section of the room, so I had to end up going into my workshop area to do it. It'll swing back around and come down the back side of the layout. These tunnel portals I custom built myself with the help and the instructions of Harry Henning III. And then there's Farmingdale Junction. That's a Corber kit. And then all my switches are guardrails. They're all number 6 switches, I believe. Either number 6 and a mix of number 6 and 072. So a lot of work was poured into doing all this for sure. And I'm very happy with this layout because I can run whatever I want to run basically now. Alright, so I don't want to deter anybody from creating a layout without a plan. Because I sometimes I get guys that come up to me, they say they have these locomotives, they got these trains. I'm like, wow, that sounds awesome. How big's your layout? Oh, I don't have one yet. You don't have a layout yet? No, I'm not going to build one until I retire. And my eyes light up and I cringe. And the reason why I'm get second thoughts myself is my mind is am I going to make it to retirement? Am I going to be able to build something like this when I reach retirement age? Those are things that cross through my mind, which is why I went ahead and started mine, when I did. I probably have a hard time maintaining this layout, let alone building something like that by the time I reach retirement. Working in the world of trucking, between your back and your knees, it takes a toll on you. That it does. So although, I didn't have a plan, I wouldn't have changed anything. I still would have done it the same way just to have something up and running. Because just to have that little start that I made with that L-shaped layout that I showed in this video, that's what motivated me to do more and buy more and get more. And it's wow, this is really cool. Get buildings and start doing scenery. Once the scenery starts coming together, then it's you want to keep going with it. That's all the motivation. That's the only way I can describe it. Plus, I would suggest that you build your layout in a way that you could easily add on to it and change it like I did. Um, it's by making your layout in a way that you can add this or add that to it as you go along. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody says you need to build a 20 by 40 foot long layout all in 1 year. That's a lot of work. Um, as you see in the video, it took me quite some time to get to the point where I'm at. And then having, a couple rebuilds along with a major rebuild in 2022. So yeah, it was a lot of work. Am I happy with the layout as it is now? Absolutely. I'm so happy I went with 080 on the outside and 072. It does everything I want it to do now. I can run my long 50 plus car trains on it, no problem. I can run DPU trains on here, no problem. I can run, as you guys seen, the monster train of 86 foot high cube box cars or the 89 foot auto rack train on here, no problem. So I'm really happy, yeah. And with those curves, I can easily run and accommodate steam if I ever went that direction. Who knows? Maybe you may see a Conrail T1 show up one day. I don't know. But everybody knows I'm basically a diesel fan. So I hope to make it another 10 years on Conahey Rail. Where do I go from here? I don't know. Who knows? Right now it's day by day, week by week is how I work it. Right now I just add, locomotives, rolling stock as they come out. But I can definitely tell you that I'm not going to tear this down and start over again. That's not happening. Yeah. Even if something major happened, let's just say there was a flood in the house or something like that, I probably wouldn't rebuild. More likely, probably not. Now, as far as the structures, they're all line out MTH out here. And, I've been thinking about replacing them with Menards here or there. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. Up in the air about some of the Menards buildings. They're cool and stuff, but I got to weigh that out. But, I have seen Menards buildings last a long time, too. And the next room over that you guys don't see, which is over here to this side of me, all those buildings are kits that I built. I had a lot of fun making them and putting them together. So I may add lights to them later on in the future as I have time. You gotta remember, I got a real job. Everybody thinks I'm retired for some reason. Oh, it must be nice to be retired and go to train shows. I'm like, I wish. I got a real weekly job. And working on trucks is no, it's heavy work. So trying to find time for this is, only on weekends. But at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this story on 10 years of Conahey Rail. We'll catch you guys at the next show, next club, next event. Catch you trackside. Goodbye.